So I am going to read a new thing that I'm working on at the moment, which is a story cycle that's set in space, and part of it's set on Earth as well, but the people in it are from space. But it isn't really a sci-fi book. It's more that this space setting is a kind of emotional climate. That it could be, an immigration story, or anyone who knows about distances would relate to it. So I'll just read you a few pages of the beginning of the first story. Mysteries of the Universe. My brother was in town. The firm he worked for is headquartered in that city of lights, or bodies, or dreams, or smoke, or disappearances, depending whom you ask. I made all kinds of plans for us, but he had client dinners every night, so we didn't see each other until the day he was due to fly home. The hotel where he always stayed is 16 blocks from my old apartment. I decided to head out early and walk. It was summer and the football was on. The streets were empty and everyone had their windows open. Now and then the city would erupt in flares of cheers and hoots and stomps and whistles, and then go back to holding its breath. The moons strobed in the dimming sky, and the leaves on the sidewalk trees chimed. The world felt private and haunted. I wondered why he wanted to see me. He usually came to town without telling me, and I would have to hear about it later from someone else. I guess he figured it was safe to see me now that I was leaving. I hadn't told him, but it had been all over the screens. He was standing at the far end of the lobby, by the escalators. Behind him stood an illuminated glass wall with an endless sheet of water slipping down its face. As I moved towards him, I tried to see him just as anyone would, as if he was not, and had never been, one of the great mysteries of the universe. On the ground near his feet lay his beat-up navy satchel, the program's insignia blacked out with marker pen. I looked into his sad green eyes. I could smell his cologne that cost more than my rent. "What do you want?" I said. "Just to see you. I thought we said that was okay." "No, it is." When he bent down to pick up his bag, I saw a thin metal chain glinting at his collarbone. I looped my finger through it and pulled it out of his shirt. The chain was new, its amulet a tiny platinum hammer, as familiar as his face. I wondered when he'd started wearing it again. I've never taken mine off. We crossed the lobby, our boots clicking against the pearl. Everyone pretended not to watch us. People know who we are, especially when we're together. There have been no twins and no gendered beings for hundreds of years before us, and none since. I'm the only woman on our earth, and my brother was the only man. The streets were still deserted, and the sky was the color of honey. We waited on the platform for a break in the shield to appear. We stepped on and sat down and watched the city thrum past. When I looked at his eyes reflected in the window, they looked back at me. Behind them, the streetlights popped on. At that time of year, the stars go down at noon. "It's soon, isn't it?" he said. "Are you ready?" "Yeah, I guess." I'd been here only once before, for 7 earthly days. When I returned home, our people took care of everything there in the lab. The prototype, now fully evolved, had failed to meet the requirements. That's why I had to come back. This time I am to remain here for much longer with the prototype. Because of what happened last time, our experts think maybe it isn't all down to genetics. It may be life on Earth too that makes you human. When we disembarked at the waterfront, a light metallic snow was falling. The flakes spiraled down, burning holes in the sand. The sea frond was so high it almost obscured the ocean. He parted the ferns so I could slip through. I made for the shoreline and he trailed behind, picking the pins from his hands and sucking the cuts. I packed down a patch of sand and we sat down. The tide was out, the water a lick of black and rainbow, its torn white edge pulsing. Distant figures dotted the arm of the beach, their falcons circling overhead. What is it like there? He asked me. I kind of like it. They think I'm one of them. I realized he'd never asked me about it. We weren't really talking when I came back. A lot of time had passed since then. Still, he said, are you scared? Yeah, of course. The wind picked up then, and blades of surf collided and shattered into flashing stars that arced against the sky. I pulled my knees to my chest and stretched the neck of my sweater up over my mouth. My brother took out a small metal case of baby, snapped open the lid, and touched a finger to the red crystals. Licking them off, he passed the compact to me. I took a dab and passed it back. He had a little more and peered into the mirror before clipping it shut and sliding it in his pocket. The baby melted and foamed my tongue. It evaporated in the back of my throat. My lips started buzzing. The world became pink glass. Throwing stars corkscrewed through the air. My brother was lying on his back in the soft sand. His lips looked puffy and his pupils were already heart-shaped. When I lay down next to him, I started strobing. We turned to face each other. My heartbeat pounded in my ears. Don't go. You look fat, he said. Stay here. You never call, he said. I always have to call you. Take me with you. When we met, we didn't know how to talk with our eyes yet, and we couldn't mouth talk because we were underwater. So we blew bubbles. 2 bubbles meant, hey. 3 bubbles meant, hey yourself. It was sufficient. We swam around and swallowed a lot of liquid and blinked at each other. Sometimes we slept. When we grew hands, we held each other's hands. Later, our incubators were placed next to each other. We would press our faces against the glass. By then, we had learned to eye talk, and we would tell funny stories. We named each other after things we liked in the lab. I named him Sunlight on Sharp Instruments, and he named me Freshly Rinsed Test Tube. We conspired to get out early so we could be together again. There's a very small platinum hammer on the floor of each incubator, and when you figure out how to smash the glass, you get to be outside. When the world breaks, there's another world containing it, and for the first time, you hear music, the snowy melody of breaking glass, the soft thunk of vacuum seal popping, the hush of hot air. We found a broom and were sweeping up the splinters when they came for us.